And welcome back to the Starfire Sports Stadium here in beautiful Seattle, Washington. I'm now joined by USA legend Alexander Magleby. Now, everyone knows, obviously, your history a little bit. You're with Dartmouth, took them to CRC glory, took over the sevens job with the USA men's team, found success there, then stepped back into a role with the USA Rugby as the National Director for USA Sevens. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what that title entails for you.
Yeah, just making sure that we're winning off the field, really. You know, and when I was a head coach, I was probably wearing too many hats, and that position was in charge of fundraising and the pathway and getting the X's and O's right. And it's important that we make sure that we really resource the guys on the field, and we take care of off the field stuff so everything gets taken care of for them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and you know, it's a role that's going to be very important for the progress of USA Rugby, especially in the sevens platform now being an Olympic sport. I mean, I don't think people realize who aren't involved intimately with club rugby how much actually goes into it, and then you can probably tenfold that at an international level. You got the little taste of that as a coach, and like I said, wearing many hats. Has it been good just to step away, or you still get itchy feet wanting to jump in there and coach?
Oh no, I think I'm very happy in the position I'm in, because I get to connect with a lot of the folks at the grassroots. And that's been really engaging for me and exciting for me, and certainly it's been nice to see coaches at the top of the game in terms of Coach Friday and Brownie coming in and see how they educate, and that's been great for my education. That's been a real plus. Yeah,
it's been one of the hottest subjects on Twitter all day, the Ask Mags. I think it actually shut Twitter down.
Yeah, I heard that. There's a rumor.
It beat the decision from LeBron James, the Beyonce announcement. It beat them all. And so Nigel Melville at home, he's absolutely sweating. They've given me full control of the USA Twitter account, which is terrifying.
That is scary.
And we've got a couple of questions that the people have sent in to ask. First question comes from our very own Katie Worst, who's been outstanding all day. What resources do you recommend for player development? Now, let's start this at a club level. So if I'm a coach coaching at club level around the United States, what are some of the key resources to help develop players?
Sure, and I think our job as USA Rugby is to share the right information as often as we can. And we need to do a better job of that, making sure that our coaches understand what is needed to be a national team player. What does that actually look like? And then what are the behaviors that go to that point? And I think you can just start on the physical component side. What are we measuring on the national team, and how are we comparing ourselves to international athletes in the yo-yo test, which is an aerobic capacity test? What times are we looking for in sprint, you know, in a 40 meter? So we can share that information. This is how we get athletes to that stage. That's really, really important, and that's a USA Rugby thing that we need to do. And then on the technical side, how do we share that information in terms of catch pass? How do we get better at catch pass? Little things like that. In the tackle area, how do we make sure we track better and we tackle better? And that's really, really important. And the coaching department is doing a good job starting to collect that information and share it at the grassroots, and that's going to be important. And then the coaches that are actually there in the weeds and trying to get it done every day, to chase down mentors. And I think for me that was the part that kind of changed my experience as I was transitioning from a player to a coach, and then being a coach and trying to grow was finding mentors and finding the right mentors. And I certainly benefited very much so from having the guys that really taught me and accelerated my growth.
Yeah, you definitely mentioned that. You know, the sport in itself is not new in the USA, but it went professional in '95 globally. So even looking for mentors internationally, it's been kind of tough, let alone as a developing sport. We still consider ourselves minnows over here to find coaching mentors. Did you have to look abroad a lot to find people? I mean, you look at now, we've got Chris Brown and Mike Friday here, both English, I believe, by nationality. Was it tough for you to look for mentors domestically, or did you have to go international to find someone?
I think in the United States we have a lot of very good coaches. And I think I benefited from getting mentors in other sports. I think that was huge. And at the time I was really big into video analysis and still am in a lot of ways. And so I had access to the workflows of coaches in other sports, whether that's basketball, lacrosse, field hockey. That really helped my growth. And then certainly in the rugby world, my coaches on the national team were domestic-based for the most part. And I've learned countless from them and how they've gone about the business of coaching, the craft of coaching and improving in that regard. And then certainly getting a mix of international flair and what's happening in other countries, because it's all different, right? And that's been really important for my growth, certainly.
We just had another question come through. I'll jump onto that right now. It's come from Cavalier Rugby. Are the youth of America playing enough rugby to be really successful against the best in the world?
Yeah, great question. I think that we haven't done a research, but we don't have a white paper to say 10 years ago, these are what we actually did. This is our lab, this is our control group, this is in a scientific-based paper. We haven't done that. So what we can say is anecdotally, where are we today on the field at the international level or at the age grade level relative to other countries? And we're a step behind. Have we shown improvement? Yes. We've also seen the volume, just more athletes playing the game in the United States. So you've seen more athletes competing. You're getting better guys to play the game, which is fantastic. We could perhaps learn from other sports here. And I think if you look, say, at ice hockey as an example, they would say in their development pathway, the athletes would need about 200 training sessions a year. Now, if you say if we're going to get 200 training sessions a year, I mean, that's, for us, we'd say probably that's going to be a bit too much, right, to base our seasonality. Let's say our longest season is 9 months, and we're training the game of rugby for 9 months. You're looking at, let's try to get 150 trainings in. So that's 3 to 4 trainings a week. That's still a lot, right? And that gives us an adequate time to rest and do some other things. Now, the reality, it's probably going to be 6 months at best. Yeah, so if we're going to do that in 6 months, that's 6 rugby trainings a week to get up to 150, roughly. So we're going to have to kind of train a bit more, and then make sure we're really, really efficient in the trainings that we're doing. How many repetitions are we actually getting in catch pass? And you observe a lot of the training sessions that happen now, and one of our props may only touch the ball twice in that training session, never under pressure. Then on Saturday, he's not able or she's not able to execute a 2-on-1, and we're upset. Well, perhaps we can change how we create our learning environments for those athletes. And so learn a bit more from other sports. So I'd say in general, we got to look at about 150 training sessions a year, and then anywhere between 60 and 75 seven-a-side rugby matches a year. And we'd say that would be equivalent, 3 seven-a-side matches would be equivalent to 1 15s match. So if we kind of work that formula, we're starting to get the repetitions we need. Not too many, not too few. And the other big lesson we've learned from other sports is that it's really, really important, especially at the youth and high school level, that athletes are playing other games. They're playing other sports. Those skills transition into rugby very, very well, whether that's catching a ball above your head, whether that's understanding angling lines in ice hockey, which are just like tracking lines in rugby, and that list goes on. So we find that perhaps we need to get our athletes playing multiple sports. When they are playing rugby, we've got to get more on the field work done.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and all over the world you see it. Players aren't just playing rugby. It's a combination of all sports and getting a ball in their hand, whether it be a rugby ball, football, a basketball, even a hockey puck. You talked very well. We've got time for one last question. Comes from Twitter handle @Dan Power is the greatest commentator ever. Oh, I appreciate the love. It says, I am a young rugby player in high school. I love the game. Give me a description of how I can make it to the next level. What would be my best option to get noticed by national team coaches and eventually one day play for the Eagles? Yeah, and that's a really common question, and we need to help educate the market. We get that for high school athletes, college athletes, club athletes, and crossover athletes, I would say. And really, you got to look at how do I move forward? In our structure, we look at first our competitive structure. How do I get identified? What's that structure look like? Well, for a high school athlete, it's dominate at your local level, right? Get selected then for your regional team, dominate at the regional all-star tournaments, then go to the Stars and Stripes because you did that, and then dominate at the Stars and Stripes, and then you're on the high school All-Americans. So that's the competitive pathway to get identified, right? And then in college, it's basically the same thing. You dominate at your collegiate conference level, and you get selected then to play go to the Collegiate All-American camp. You do well there. You play for the Collegiate All-Americans, and then you're one team removed from the national team, really, at that stage. And we certainly have our eyes up on those age grade athletes from high school All-Americans on up. Now, that's ideal system, and that assumes that we're scouting, doing the best job scouting on the ground and everything else. We know that's not the case right now. Right? And so we have to have other ways to identify athletes, and we're very fortunate to have partners such as Serevi who are willing to put on camps, and they're quality camps where we know what's happening. They're national team coaches, they're national team players a lot of times in those camps. We know what tests are happening. We get the data, and we can say, all right, well, there's a player there that we didn't know about who perhaps got overlooked by his region or her region, or just came to the sport pretty recently, and we didn't know about that athlete until then. So and those are happening across the region, and that's very good. And then certainly with Eagle Impact Rugby as well, and that's more on the high school All-American level with Salty's group, and they're geographically identifying and developing athletes as well. So from an identification point of view, that's the way to do it. Now from a development point of view, you got to put on a different hat and go back to, am I getting the number of repetitions I need in each week? So am I getting those 150 training sessions in at a minimum a year? Am I getting those 75 seven-a-side matches in a year? Are they quality? Am I getting feedback on the repetitions I'm doing? And those are the two things you got to look at. How do I get identified?
and then how do I develop?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one comes up a lot. The landscape of American sports is so different to anywhere else in the world, with college sports being the monster it is over here, and it can be quite tough to try to figure out comparing other systems.
Yeah.
You really need something unique, and I thought you've done a fantastic job with that. The ODAs, the Olympic Development Academies, really done a fantastic job, because now locally you've got these places where young players can aspire to. I want to be in the ODA. I want to be in the Serevi ODA,
Exactly.
the Tiger Rugby ODA, the Northeast ODA, who have all done a fantastic job identifying players, and we're seeing a few of them out here today.
Developing players, really, at that level, it's about let's close the gap between development, emerging elite, when you'd say the national team is elite, right? So that's kind of that emerging elite stage where you're ready, you're on the cusp of being a national team player. Let's further your development. Let's get you there.
Well,
ODAs.
I'm not going to hold you up any longer. There's a lot of talent out here. I know you want to get back to watching some rugby. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us.
It's been great. Thank you.
It's been very informative. I'm sure the people at home watching enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
And if you've got any more questions, you can shoot them our way. I'll ask him at the hotel tonight. We're going to have a few beers and catch up. Sorry, a few Smith Forge ciders we're going to have a little later, and we'll get the answers to you tomorrow. We'll be right back in a moment. We've got an interview with Ross Young from Serevi Rugby, telling us everything that's going on with one of those programs we mentioned with the Serevi program. Don't go away.